in your writings, in your lectures, you emphasize something else, and I'll start at another point. What this devaluation of outsiders is something that we've looked into, and it's very common when people have what's called there are many ways to describe this, but one way to call it is cult thinking, meaning that, and cult, I don't mean cults as in just Guyana and extreme religious cults. I mean a certain kind of mental state where you belong to a group and your group is better than other groups, and you start devaluing outsiders. This is very instinctive in us, and it can get out of hand, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So my sense is that an education process about our nature, that we have this tendency to want to devalue outsiders as soon as we belong in a group. Most people aren't even aware of this. So an education in that direction could be useful. Your view on that would be great, but also you emphasize, I think, what you call intermediary institutions, and what I'd even describe as mediating institutions in any society. The media, loyal opposition, civil society, as mechanisms of managing the extremes. So what could you tell us more about that, the mediating instruments in a society, as well as your comment on, well, very frankly, maybe if I can put it quite simply, better educational processes about human nature, about the way, how we're vulnerable?
So this is fascinating. I think, it will be interesting to think about what a reform of the national curriculum might look like, where instead of talking about the great triumphs of human nature, we talk about our weaknesses as well. There's so much literature now on, say, cognitive biases. Earlier on, I mentioned confirmation bias, and confirmation bias is so fascinating because people will look for peer-reviewed scientific articles that support their view. And of course, isn't this the gold standard, the peer-reviewed scientific article? And so anyone can support their view if they look hard enough, and they'll find the article. What they might find is one article among hundreds, and others are saying something quite different. So a systematic review rather than the cherry picking of studies. And yeah, I'm as guilty as this as anyone when I'm doing interdisciplinary work. I look for the study that confirms what I want to argue for, rather than doing a systematic review of everything, because I don't have the skills to do that in many fields. There are fascinating things in cognitive psychology about how we value things, and how simply the framing of something can completely change our opinion of it. We can be given logically identical propositions and agree with one and deny the other. And this is all very well documented. And you're also talking about now problems in our social psychology. And I think the phenomena you're describing is one maybe the same or related to this idea of being submerged in the crowd sometimes. That sometimes people like to be part of something for which they don't have to take responsibility. So if there's a mob, it doesn't make any difference whether you're there or not. It will do the same thing whether you're there or not. Someone else is in control, if anyone is. Might be fun. You might get a moment of exhilaration. There might be a type of freedom in not having to make decisions. So you can see how these things can appeal to something in our human nature. And so to know more about that and to be guarded against it, I think would be a fascinating thing. I'm sure there are 100 popular books about it, but how we get it better understood, and more than understood, used, is another question.